Oops. Well, we might want
Hi, Shelby. Hi, Deanna. Casey.
Here comes Tammy into the room.
Hi, Tammy. We're giving everyone just a couple more minutes before we get started.
Okay.
Here comes Phyllis.
Stephen, you're going to have to get lost. The women are going to take over.
Uh-oh.
I mean, we already have. It's
Yeah.
just
You might.
we like to let.
If you've seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Oh, years ago.
Okay, that was my life growing up. So I grew up with very strong Greek women in my family. I'm good.
That's why you're such an advocate for women.
Might be.
Yeah.
I've thought about that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's something to be said for the Greek festivities and all of that. So
We surprisingly have a Greek festival.
everyone should have a Greek festival. You know, one of the best lines out of that movie is, there are two types of people in this world.
Huh.
Greeks and people who wish they were a Greek. Jane's like, oh my gosh, can he get out of the Q&A? So apparently there are no fellow Greeks in the room. All right. We should probably get started because Jane, I know you have a lot of material to get through, and I will keep my eye on the waiting room.
Okay, that'll be great. So, hello everyone, and thank you for investing your precious time with me today. I'm Jane Pfeiffer. I'm founder and president of Field Trip. Field Trip is a marketing and branding firm that helps nonprofits reduce their largest expense. And that expense is an IDK. So you may not know that, but I guarantee that you do know what an IDK does. An IDK is an I don't know you. I don't know why I should care. I don't know if your work is important. I don't know if you can help me, and so on and so forth. And those are large expenses because they create the cost of lost opportunities. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How to reduce those lost opportunities, because when we're facing a recession, we can't give away anything. We have to hold on tight and, when possible, grow. So we work with executive leaders of nonprofits to solve three key issues. One is that their mission has never been more relevant or needed, but the friction around resources and revenues is also growing. Two, they're overwhelmed because they feel like they're the best kept secret and they don't know where to start or how to change that. And then finally, there's a tremendous gap between the needs of the people that they support or the organization that they support, and then misperceptions that live in the minds of others who either aren't familiar with them or even understand how their work or their experiences resonate. So if those sound like anything that you face, then you're in the right place. Here's what to expect. I'm going to take about 15-20 minutes to walk through our options of revolting, reinventing, and rebounding and recover ahead of a recession. And after giving you some examples, we'll open it up for questions. You'll drop those in the chat. We are recording this, so you'll also get a link to that today, and you can feel free to share it. And as a result of our time, I want you to walk away feeling a little better There is no silver bullet, but if you can find one thing in your organization that you can twist and prepare and be in a stronger position, then we've made some help, and that's the goal. So pivoting an organization when you're facing a crisis is really hard. Our human tendency is to really constrict and withdraw and stay in that kind of safe space. And what I'm encouraging you is to do just the opposite. So we're going to look at the options of revolting, reinventing, rebounding, and recover through the lens of what we call the AAA assessment. Now, if you may be familiar with this with my mission multiplier videos, because we do talk about this a lot, but to keep everybody on the same page, we're going to walk through it again. Here is an example. So the organization that we're going to talk about is Oregon Child Abuse Solutions, and the executive director, Becky Jones, is also with us. Hi, Becky. And so the challenge that they were facing, well, there were several, just like all of you, but one of the issues was they needed to make significant change, but nobody wanted to talk about child abuse. It didn't happen in their family, their neighborhood, their schools, their community. So it just needed to go over there. Well, if you can't engage people and make connections to talk about it, then how do you really make a difference? And what Becky and her team realized is they didn't know how to talk about it in such a way. And she took a brave step forward to say, this organization is here to end child abuse in the state, but we have to know how to connect with people and how to make everyone realize that they have a role to play. So for this example, we're going to take one audience. For the AAA assessment, you do it a unique evaluation for each audience. And in this case, we're going to use mandatory reporters. So police, nurses, coaches, there's several people that would be legally required to report any signs of child abuse. And so when we think about all the mandatory reporters that would live in the state of Oregon, you know, how many of them would be aware of OCAS? Oregon Child Abuse Solutions. And so we're going to say it's 10%. Now, at an awareness level, it means that they know the name and they have an understanding what you do. So, you know, Shelby, I saw the name of your organization, so it's safe to assume you're working in ballet and performing arts. Okay, I know the name and I have an understanding of what you do. That's the first step. But this is a 3-level relationship that we build with each audience. So in order to be aware of you, I have to have that understanding. But to take it to the next level, I have to align. And alignment looks like what you do is important and you might be a quality option. There might be other options, but at the alignment level, I've leaned in. I might have gone to your website, gone to a performance, gone to volunteer, made a donation, asked for your help in a time of need. So there might be a transaction and engagement in this phase, but that doesn't mean our work is done, because at alignment, obviously that percentage can't be higher than 10% because only 10% of the mandatory reporters are aware of us. It has to be less. And so for simple math, we're going to say it's 5% of the mandatory reporters in the state of Oregon actually know that OCAS offers training, and yeah, that's a good option. Now, the third level requires that there is some type of connection or engagement, transaction, if you will, because advocacy is where the tables flip. Now, at advocacy level, not only do they know you, know what you do, believe that you're a solid provider, have done work with you or engage with you, but now you are part of their identity. They feel like they are part of the solution. And when they feel that strongly and closely, then what happens is they're doing some of the work for you. They're bringing new audience members to you. And so as mandatory reporters went trained, they had a great experience, then they can go and tell more. But if they came and the video didn't load and they didn't know what they watched, or the quality of the video, the content was not what they expected, they're not going to progress to that advocacy level. So again, simple math, we'll just say half of those are advocates. So now you can see here's the line for mandatory reporters. And what OCAS had to do was reduce this, the cost of lost opportunities. And nonprofits tend to think about, how do we focus in awareness? More people need to know. But if you expand awareness and move that line over to the right, and you haven't addressed alignment and advocacy, really you're wasting time and energy. We need to start from the bottom. And so that's revolting. And for Oregon Child Abuse Solutions, they weren't revolting, but they did choose to revolt. And they chose to instead not accept that this was an untouchable topic. They took a different position and they said, we're going to make it approachable. We're going to make it even appear hopeful. And for them, that meant defining their role, not about training or other treatment and services, but about protect and heal children. Protect and heal. That was something that their entire team could get behind and advocate, and everybody could share in that. So as a result of changing how the community saw them, they were able to increase their trainings 700%, their training revenue 500%, and that led state legislators to believe in the organization and their vital role in training. And for the first time ever, direct $7 million to increase their training resources. That happens at advocacy because people believe so strongly in you, they're going to help you make things happen. Now, Reinvent is a different relationship. And what happens in Reinvent is instead of swimming upstream against ourselves, we're looking for smaller opportunities to change something. It's a big change, and what we often struggle with is how to do it, or what's the one thing that needs to be changed. So an example is when you think about all the people that you have to communicate with, all the people that you need them to support and participate and join you in some direction, it's often very easy to lose sight in the most important audience, and that's your oh, sorry, that was thunder, scared me a little. It's your beneficiaries or your patrons, because when you show that you get them and you understand, then everybody else follows. So in this example, we worked with an organization that offered recovery services for those struggling with substance abuse disorder, specifically pregnant women in a very rural, conservative community. The need was great, but the facility was extremely underutilized. And so the organization was doing everything they could to explain to social workers, court caseworkers and things, that this is the importance of it. This is why women need to be referred here. But what they overlooked, and what we found by talking to some of the graduates of the program, is that yes, there was shame and guilt associated with being pregnant and struggling with street drugs or alcohol. But what was missed was the fact that these women were faced with a lose-lose situation. Either they would get treatment for themselves, but they would have to be separated from their children or their soon-to-be newborn. Or they could refuse to take care of their addiction issue, and then they could stay with their children. It's a scenario where everybody loses. But this organization actually allowed the mothers to stay with their children, but they had never focused on that and really drove that home. So we focused on just targeting and communicating to mothers, and we did it in a way that brings respect, avoids shame and guilt. So, the key language and what everything supported was to build the life you deserve. Build the life you deserve. Keep your family together. That's the second priority. Beat addiction and deliver a healthy baby. All these things matter. We changed the belief that the women wanted to be a good mother rather than thinking about why are they being a bad mother. And it was a complete and absolute focus on the emotional side that the pregnant women were facing. So this is reinventing. It's reinventing how they talked about the program and how they positioned it. Now, this happens at the alignment level because we're making sure that people understand what we do and how we go about doing it. That happens in alignment. Now, Rebound happens at an awareness level, because in Rebound, we're looking not for maybe as significant of changes, but small wins that we can make an investment, or we can grab market share, share of mind, something that we can do different with the products and services that we already have. So here, I'm going to use Field Trip as an example. We typically work with nonprofits in one of two ways. One, it's a project. They've gotten some funding for a rebrand, a website, a campaign to increase utilization or attendance. Or we become their marketing team, and there's an ongoing lengthy relationship, and we, put marketing in the strategic part of that organization, lifting up everything. Well, that's been working for us. But as we look down the road and think about what the impact of a recession on nonprofits, there's going to be a tightening. So how do we help more? And so we've created a third option, which is a do it with you playbook, where we're working on a short-term basis, side by side, not only creating insights and assets, but actually teaching and coaching, overworked directors and marketing people how to use and apply the information immediately as we create it. So that's allowed us to have more awareness, because now we're able to speak to and attract a different type of nonprofit leader, and then bring them through the alignment and the advocacy process. So Revolt happens at the advocacy level. It's the changing the essence of what you do, most importantly, how you talk about what you do, how you communicate it. Reinventing happens at alignment, because you're making sure people can say yes to what you do. And then Rebound happens at awareness, because you're looking for a way to open more doors and have more conversations. Now, I also mentioned Recover, but we're not going to do an example, because that's what we're trying to avoid. It's not that, this is easy work, but if you take small incremental steps along the way, you will lessen your need to be in recovery mode at the end of the recession. So we'll open it up for questions here, but, be thinking through the phases of your relationships with different audiences. So at the advocacy level, have you made a bold promise? And is it unique to your organization? And can you state it in 3 to 4 words? Is it that simple, the impact of what you do, not how you do it, where you do it, or what you do? At the alignment level, is your organization vision, is it unique, bold, and crystal clear to the people that you target, serve, support? Do you serve them with such conviction that everybody else can see that passion and say, I believe this organization is authentic and that's where I'm headed? Or finally, is it growing awareness? Are the alignment and the advocacy, can you say yes to all those questions? And it's really about addressing misperceptions and judgments that are in your way, and who is on the fence to opening and listening from you. So those are the 3 stages. Go ahead and drop your questions in the chat, and we'll work through those together. Okay, thanks, Megan. I see the first one about recommending creating a bold promise. The nature of nonprofits is to be humble. There is charity involved, but we have to get over that. Humility is often in our way. There's a recent video I did where I compared what we do to kind of the life of a professional athlete. Now, there are those athletes that are arrogant and cocky and no, we don't want to head that direction. But there are also those that are so determined and skilled and precise, and they have to visualize, they just don't have room for humility to say, well, somebody else can do it better. I'm just meek and I hope good things happen to me. I know that's an extreme example, but we really have to look internally. And the power of making a bold promise is that when you say it with conviction and belief, and your day-to-day habits within the organization and yourself show that you're moving that direction, then everybody can believe it. And it's a simple statement. It's about ending child abuse in a state. It's about, making sure this goal happens, and just saying that with conviction. When you look about, the OCAS example, it wasn't, our bold promise wasn't, we're going to do all these things and here's a list of 20 things. It's, we are going to heal and protect the children of Oregon. And so that doesn't sound like a snazzy tagline, but when you think about the simplicity of that, all these things ladder up to healing or protecting. And that's a bold position.
Awesome. Thank you, Jane. That it is so simple, but so impactful.
So Jane, is it okay too if we go open mic?
Sure.
So we could
Absolutely.
use both the chat box and open mic if somebody wanted to do that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So whoever has the next question.
Well, I was hoping we'd solve some problems, but I don't think we've solved all the world's problems.
So,
and probably not yours.
Well, Jane, as you were coming in for a landing before you went open mic, you mentioned understanding misperceptions and judgments that are in the way. So how does an organization find out what they are? Like, how does an organization understand or better understand what misperceptions or judgments are in their way? Because maybe what they perceive to be that might not be that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We get so caught up in explaining what we do, how we do it, why it's important, why people should care. So, I can explain the agency in terms of, okay, we build websites and we do these things and, we have a great time doing it and we enjoy working with our clients. All those things are great, but any agency could say that. So we focus on the pain points that we solve. What do you bring to people? What type of impact? And another example is, I could say as a leader of a nonprofit that maybe, feeds children before school at a school program. Well, we feed, 500 children every day, a healthy breakfast because they don't have one at home. That's true. I'm not saying deny that. But when you talk about it instead as we're nourishing the minds of tomorrow, you're bringing emotion, you're bringing an invitation, you're not using rationale, and every decision, whether I'm going to engage or turn away from your organization, begins and ends in an emotional state. Yes, the figures and how you go about doing that do make sense, but it's only to rationalize that emotional response that you have at the beginning. I can think of the ballet, Shelby, not to pick on you, but having a ballet as a client, I know some of the misperceptions that exist around this particular art form. And so how do we break it down? Not that it's dancers on a stage and classical music, but how do we break down the experience and the emotion of, setting, yes, in an audience, but realizing the perfection that can exist in the human body. And what does that do in terms of an experience for your own mind and body as well? It's leading with that emotion first. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm curious to know what Shelby thought of that too, since you were talking about her or her organization as an example.
Picking on her.
But like, how do you collect that data? Like, that might be helpful for others in the room too. Like to like quantify what a misperception and or judgment might be.
Yeah, we work hard every day. We have a team that supports us. We have experiences to deliver, people to help. We have a board of directors. And what we often miss is that the people whose minds we're trying to change, they're not at the boardroom table. They're not in your walls. And so it really begins with just sitting down and talking to someone. And not someone who's a raving fan of the organization. They're already there. Somebody that's on the fringes or somebody that's never participated, and asking why and what would be in the way. And even if they were aware of it, what would keep them from coming to experience something or to donate or to come to this particular location for a meal or shelter or some type of, family support. What is in the way? And rarely is it just as simple as, well, I didn't know you were there. If you hear that, then you have to probe beyond that, because it might be more as, well, yeah, it's true, I didn't know you were there, but I just didn't think you would help me because of XYZ. Or I didn't think that problem needed to be solved because I assumed XYZ. So just, why is that true? Why? And just keep probing and probing until you really get to an emotional reason of, why aren't they participating? Why aren't they turning towards your organization rather than being neutral or away?
That's a great roadmap. Shelby, did you have something else to add to that? I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I was about to type it all in the chat. That is something we currently struggle with. So you see ballet and you think, oh, it's just another ballet studio. We offer all different types of dance, regardless of the ability to pay. So almost half of our students are on partial or full scholarship. But we've got tutoring, mentoring, a paid apprenticeship program. We're in 6 Shelby County schools. So it's really getting that message out there to the community that we're more than just dance. We're a whole child development organization. So this is right on line with what we talk about every day. It's getting our board members to advocate for us and really tell the community all that we do.
Yeah, I mean, you said those magic words yourself. It's not about dance, it's about development. Yes. And so really focusing on that, but it's also a delicate balance, because if you have professional experienced dancers as well, or even someone who's farther along, then that child development isn't as relevant for them, but it's all about the journey of starting here. And, yes, it might be a phase, but it might grow into something else. And when, we think about the discipline that has to happen in really any type of dance, I mean, it evolves so much. So that development can be true at any age. And so how do you take that and make it applicable?
We're working on it.
All right.
Exactly what we're doing now. We've got a new strategic plan in place to help get that message out there.
And does your board get that and understand it?
Yes.
That's powerful, because a lot of time that's a really big struggle. Is there an audience that you feel doesn't get that or might be resistant?
It's always I think there was a statistic of like 2% of the population cares about dance. And so when they see new ballet, we've, side note, talked about changing the name because they hear ballet again and it's just another dance studio. And so we are struggling with that they just don't want to hear it because it's another ballet studio in Memphis. And there's 3 of us in Midtown now. So
yeah, you're right. I mean, sometimes the more literal name can be advantageous, and sometimes it does work against us, especially when you have, significant misperceptions on what you do and offer and that impact. So sounds like an area that, again, might be more substantial. And so you're looking at that advocacy level of kind of revolting and saying, okay, we've got to do everything differently and appear differently than what we are.
Yeah, smart observation. What Nancy just put into chat sounds like that the ballet is a tool, not the mission.
Yes. Oh, I like how you worded that. Thank you.
Yep. Great point.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mm-hmm. So Anna said, say my team and I are on board to Revolt with our marketing. What are great ways to get a board of directors on board as well? Yeah,
well, boards come in all different shapes and sizes and attitudes. So, there isn't a single answer, but often, and Becky, I'm tagging you because I'd like your perspective as well. You have to think of it as a journey rather than a conversation. Mm-hmm. So when you can take it through an incremental process and break it down into small things that they can say yes to, then, I don't want it to sound like mind manipulation, but the more times they can say yes to. So when you're talking about, you do some audience discovery, like let's say we're going to go talk to, millennials who have never been to the ballet and find out what's in our way. You're reporting back data, facts, observations, inferences, and just simply reporting that and saying, okay, if this is true, then these are the implications. It's not a solution yet, but do you agree that this can be true and this is how it impacts the organization? That's a yes. Then, the next stage would be, okay, now what do we want to do with it? Not a solution yet, but what is the vision and how do we know when we've made change in this area? Is it because, millennials, are attending, that attitudes have shifted, or we see something like this? What would success look like? All right, can we agree on how success is defined? And once you've got, yes, I see the world the same way you do, 2, I see success the same way you do, then you can come in with a solution and say, here's how we solve that problem. And it's a lot easier that rather than just walking in with a solution, here's how we're going to solve this big problem, because they haven't said yes to seeing it the same way you do. And that's a helpful process. Is that valuable, Anna?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
I can add something to that, because I think it's working on both levels. So it's getting the buy-in of what they and what everyone would like to see at the small level. And it's also thinking about your outcomes or where you want to go, the things they care about. You have a strategic plan. So does your current, are your current assets helping you get there? Are they holding you back? Are they keeping you steady? So wrapping, the way I looked at it with my former organization was, if our strategic plan had, training, engagement, more resources, more kids served, all of those things, then I would backtrack to what do I have to put in place as a leader so we can get to that end goal. And so I really see working on, your essence, your marketing, your communications, your messaging, all of that is just a part of your strategic plan, truly. And instead of coming at it through like, we need to invest in this because we want to have, we want people to look at who we are and be immediately engaged. That is true, but it's really the means to the end, right? It's getting more advocates on your side so you can make bigger moves with your nonprofit and have bigger impact. And I think most board members, they're coming for a couple hours a week or a month, maybe, if they're really engaged. So they really do care about the mission. And I think getting them to think about where you want to take it as an ED or where we can all take it is better than looking at it piecemeal. Like, I want a website, or I want a brand, or I want to fix this collateral. So I would say looking at it both ways.
Awesome. Jane, it looks like you have another question in chat from Megan about beneficiaries. So why do you believe so strongly that beneficiaries are the primary audience?
Yeah, we came to this realization. It's been a few years. We were working with a large organization, $100 million operation, very complex sector, recovery, mental, physical health, job training, housing, serving, the unhoused population. And as we went through our first phase, which is that survey, discovery, the interviews, the discussions, and just, don't try to solve, just listen and probe, get to those emotional viewpoints. What we realized is that internally, this sounds a little obvious because I'm paraphrasing, but, everybody felt like their division team was the most important. And this, the website should lead with, will you offer medically, assisted addiction services? Well, we should lead. And when we mapped it out, we identified almost 30 different audiences that they had to work with. And how do you make one asset speak to all of those? Because you can't, and do it effectively. And what we came to was, if the website first and foremost welcomed the person in need. So we took away any, fancy development. We, used very literal menus. We, it was essentially, you need housing, you need, health support, or you need a job. What, stay, health, or, job training. And that's what happens when you come to the website. And then the experience is based on those choices. Now, if you're not in that position, so you're not in an emotional state of fear or insecurity or hungry, then you can very quickly find the content that you need. If you're a civic leader or a legislator or a donor or a partner, like a, insurance organization, and you will figure it out. But when they saw, what we convince is, like, when you see that how dedicated this organization was to being immediately available, knowing their audience so well and what would be in their way and what they needed, then everybody circled around that. Everybody could say yes to that. And really, time and time again, it's just incredibly true. And so it should make your job a lot simpler in terms of, you can't, use what the website to maybe go, lobby. You might need a completely different audience. There are exceptions to the rule, but the majority of the time, if you focus on your one most important audience and do it really well, you have to do less with the other audiences that you need to speak with. So you can become more efficient and more impactful by focusing on the one.
Awesome. Thank you, Jane. Love that.
Other questions? And feel free to go open mic if you don't want to use the chat. Oh, looks like Nancy's got her hand up. Go ahead, Nancy. You got the floor.
Thank you. I love what you said, Jane, and I kind of want to build on that if I can. I think one of the things that, in my experience and my background, I see that sometimes what we just need to do is nurturing those relationships and those resources that, or stakeholders, or I think you identified them as something else. I can't remember. But I think that is really, it doesn't have to be, like you said, on a website. I totally agree. It just needs that we need to have this ability to be able to nurture the relationship with that specific stakeholder, whether it be in the user, whether it be in the investor or the donors or the funders, or, like you said, the board of directors. So sometimes it's just understanding what that audience needs, and again, planning, part of your strategy should be that nourishment is what can I do to keep them updated, keep them engaged, keep them involved. And like you said, it doesn't have to just be the website is the answer to everything. And so that's, I think, what I've, again, gathered in my background and just the years of experience that I've had in nonprofit.
Absolutely, yes. That nurturing is really key. I'm going to throw back up the AAA assessment, but when you think about it, how many times have you or someone in your organization says, well, all we need to do is tell more people we're here. If we tell them, then the rest will take care of itself. But, if you do grow awareness and now you move up to 50% of the market or the sector or the population is familiar with you, and then they come down to either learn more, or they say yes to working with you or receiving benefits from you, and the experience is bad, or it's really difficult, or it's cumbersome, or it just isn't for them, then they're gone. They're going to go somewhere else or turn in a different direction. So if you're stuck down here with alignment, and even worse with advocacy, it does not matter how far. You could have 100% awareness and you're still going to have a dramatic drop, and that's expensive. So in terms of nurturing, you have to figure out how you can start at the bottom and really focus on, okay, once they come to us, what is that experience going to be like? How can we make it easy for them to become our champion and, empower them? You can't force it, obviously, but how is your process inherent to build champions? And then, we can talk about, you have to continue to nurture and feed those. But if you don't think about the steps and the depths of your relationships, then you're always stuck in that cycle of awareness, and it won't be as fruitful as it should be. I'd tell you to save your time and money.
Jane, can you give examples of what types of things an organization can do to turn someone into an advocate?
Yeah, it's, and I'm sure we have such a variance of, nonprofits here, but, it can be little things from, let's look at the slightest level of alignment. So, in working with another organization, they had an underutilization situation as well. And I mean, finding things like they had never completed their, Google directory or place page. So even when people were looking for those services, they were invisible. They weren't on the map. So if you can't be found, how are people going to move down? Now, same thing, like when you did find the website and you submitted a form, it just didn't even recognize like the need that you had at that time. It could not have been more robotic. Same thing when you called. They never thought about like what their greeting experience was. So that's at the very basic level. But then when you think about, working with, whether it's side by side or in support of someone, if it's not a great experience and something that they can say yes to again and again, then they're gone. So being an advocate is doing what you do and doing it really well, and remembering to check it from the outside in, as opposed to just, I know we're experts at this and everyone else will believe it. Check against that to make sure that what you think you're delivering is really the true delivery. And then, to focus and take it down to the advocacy level, is it easy to talk about the inspirational work that you do? Do you use it so often that that's just how they introduce you? That it's, the new ballet ensemble is a moving experience. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. And, doesn't have the word ballet or even dance in it. It's moving both literally and figuratively. And so when people can start to cite that as a reason that they're saying yes, then the rest of it will come. But clear the hurdles and just have an open mind to look at everything.
Love that.
Yeah, Megan. So we're actually finalizing an ebook that will have kind of a walkthrough through the AAA assessment. So you can, run that exercise yourself. And, I showed it for mandatory reporters for OCAS, but you could look at any audience, and evaluate it each differently. Again, it's a gut feel. I'm not asking you to scientifically measure it, but that it will come in that ebook, or you can just give me a call and we can walk through a couple scenarios with your organizations and see what we learn.
Awesome. Thank you. Will that be emailed, or will we need to get it?
Yes. You'll get, I think, an email. We should have it ready early next week. There's a follow-up. What other questions? How can I help?
Nancy's got her hand up.
Thank you, Stephen. One of the things that our organization struggles with, we're a nonprofit that focuses on economic development. And what we do is we house different programs under this organization. And so you would imagine that each program would have its own mission. to advocate and bring awareness to. And what we struggle with, I think, or one of the things I think the board of directors asked us is to bring awareness to the actual nonprofit, the organization, not necessarily just the programs. So then, just focusing, if you think of an umbrella, and this organization is here, and then it houses all these different programs. We have about 8 different programs that focus on economic development in schools, for school students, or students in schools, if you will, business owners, innovation and research. There's a lot of different programs. And again, we do really well in marketing and advocating and advertising and bringing awareness to each program, but not necessarily awareness of all the results that this organization delivers as a whole. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what would be the right path to take. And I do like the model that you presented here earlier. I just don't know how that would work with different competing programs and demands and and so forth. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, it's a chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
So I would say, obviously it would be great for the organization if the nonprofit itself was more recognized. That would feel good, that would be rewarding. How does that benefit your audiences? So the people that take part in the programs, what is the benefit to them of knowing that this happens because of one organization?
Well, a couple of things. One is past performance, or what we would call historical success for this organization, and the ability to be sustainable, getting more programs, getting more growth for the organization. So it's not necessarily how is this going to benefit everyone else? It's how it's going to benefit and grow the nonprofit itself.
Yeah, and so I don't want to sound obstinate here, but I think you still have to answer that question. So if your audience is, like, here might be an example, because I know this program is, offered as part of XYZ organization, I know it's going to be worth the investment of time. It could be, well, I feel better taking part in a program that is, a nonprofit and trying to build the economic, development in our community. There, it's not going to be as tangible, but you have to define what's in it, what's going to be that end user, if you will, what's going to be their benefit. Because if there isn't an answer to that, then there probably isn't a need, other than the organization would just like to be known. But
yeah, that is, I would say, sorry to interrupt you,
no, that's
but
okay.
It's really, that is really the struggle, is that I know XYZ program that focuses on innovation and research, but I don't know that it's delivered by the host agency, which is the nonprofit. So I think that is such a big struggle, because we don't want to dim the light on that program, but we also want to highlight this organization that houses all these different programs. And it's really a means of growth. Like, how can we grow and be known and recognized as a name that focuses on economic development? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we're saying the same things. And so that nonprofit affiliation in those programs has to be additive. If it's just, hey, now our logo is going to appear and now we're just going to be added to the existing messages, I mean, that might be how it appears, but the reasoning and the rationale behind it is there has to be added value to bringing that in your communication efforts. And that probably won't be a literal, okay, now on every brochure, it's going to say, these words, but internally there has to be a recognition that, like, what is the essence of the positive impact that because we're this nonprofit adds to each of these programs.
Mm.
You know it's there because without that organization, the programs wouldn't have, but how can you articulate that in a way that is so easy for people to understand and say yes to?
Yeah.
So I'm recognizing your challenge, and I think you're looking at it the right way. Working with your team to kind of self-reflect on what is the reason and the rationale, and how do we make it about more than we just want recognition. Not that that's what you're saying, but that might be what you're hearing.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I want to add to one quick thing on that is, I think, asked another way, it's what you want is recognition, right? Is there a way that what you're doing now can't also achieve that? Right. So like you have programs that are doing wonderful things. If you continue to invest in that, will you get, the resources? It's kind of to what end? Are you looking for more funding, more notoriety? Now, of course, if there's an advocacy level to it, that's where it gets a little trickier, right? Because you still want it to be for beneficiaries, everything you do, but internally you want to be able to talk to people who have decision-making, opportunities about it as a whole. And I'll say one thing, because I've worked in a couple of nonprofits that have this exact problem. I had one that was had 4 different programs with all different branding, and it was a nightmare. It was really, really horrible, but it did great work, but it was really difficult from a messaging standpoint. I would say another way to think about it, instead of the traditional kind of hierarchy of we're this organization and we have, economic development here, like you would see in an org chart, is I heard recently about thinking about it like a solar system. So there is a value that's in the middle that's connecting all of these programs. There's something you stand for, or there's some outcome that people can reasonably expect no matter where they go, right? They're finding a solution to something. And so thinking about what is that central point that connects why you've developed 8 programs. There was some reason that it made sense to happen under you, unless you're, really an umbrella where you're having incubators and things like that. But I would say if there is a middle point, and it's hard to think about it hierarchical, maybe thinking about it the sun's in the middle, and that's what you stand for, whether it's internally or externally. But it makes it all kind of make sense.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you.
So Jane, just doing a little bit of housekeeping here. We probably have time for one more question. If anybody else has another question, just so that we can hard stop on time and respect everybody's schedules.
And I'm going to throw my contact information up on the screen just so you have it. I mean, again, you'll be getting an email recap, but if you want to just have a conversation, feel free to give me a call, drop me an email. The more we help each other, the better we get.
Amen.
And the stronger. Yeah, so is there another question that we can help with? Okay, well, again, thanks for the time. Really appreciate the discussion on the AAA assessment, how to revolt, reinvent and rebound and avoid recovery. So you'll get a copy of the recording, and then next week you'll get a copy also of the ebook. And as always, eager and happy to help have a conversation or work through any questions you might have after this session. Thanks so much for your time.